I don't know that there has ever been a less qualified Secretary of Education than Linda McMahon. I am going to show you the caliber of what this Secretary of Education, did I say Secretary of Education or State before? Now I think my brain glitched. I'm going to show you the caliber of this Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. And only Betsy DeVos, Trump's first term Secretary of Education, even comes close. As you may know, Linda McMahon is big mad about DEI. She wants to get rid of all DEI. She says some of it's illegal, etc. Well, Congresswoman Lee started questioning Linda McMahon. What about teaching the Tulsa race massacre? What about teaching that Joe Biden won the 2020 election? Are these considered DEI? Is this illegal curricula? And I don't think it will shock you to hear that Linda McMahon suffered a complete and total collapse on what are pretty damn simple questions.
That I would like your thoughts on, simple yes or no. If this is a legal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa race massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
I would have to get back to you on that. Why would it be illegal to teach about the Tulsa race massacre? McMahon's not sure.
Do you know what the Tulsa race massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about...
By the way, it's not even clear she knows what it is.
The book, Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance.
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That
to
was a
cite,
specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was
for
an
you-
incredibly
for
specific
you to
example.
submit
I named
those
a
in your
specific book.
questions, and I will look into it and get back to you on
Thank
them. I
you.
look
How
forward
about
to
a
answering them
school having a
directly.
voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that.
Voluntary.
Well, let's make sure that in our schools.
This is yes or no?
We're looking. No, it's not.
Okay. How was it I would like your thoughts?
Okay, so like that's pretty bad, right? That's like a 7 out of 10 as to how bad it is, but it gets even worse. Then the question becomes, what about a social studies class that teaches Biden won the 2020 election? A historical fact, an empirical reality, an undeniable truth. McMahon's not totally sure because she goes, well, it should be taught accurately. And of course, we all know what this is about. This is less about what Linda McMahon believes. I think Linda McMahon believes and knows that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, but she doesn't want to get in trouble with the big guy. This is about virtue signaling and proving her loyalty. And proving loyalty includes being evasive as to whether it is accurate to teach that Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Okay. How about social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election?
I think our studies should all be taught accurately.
Okay, better answer would be Biden won, so it would be correct to teach that. But she doesn't say that. She's evasive.
Yes or no?
I think our studies should
No.
be taught accurately.
The question was, do you believe that social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election is an illegal DEI? Yes or no?
I think I have said we should teach accurately. We should.
No,
be
you have
on all
not answered
sides.
the question.
Well,
I
answering
don't
the
understand
question.
why you're incapable
I'm
of
just
answering.
not giving you the answer you want. but
No, I
am
want the
answering
answer,
question.
whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no.
No, the answer is I.
The
think
answer
our
is
courses
yes or
should be
no.
taught
Gentleladies,
Thank you so
time
much.
is-
I yield back.
She is not going to answer the question with a yes or no. Certainly not with a, of course it's okay to teach that Biden won. Because rule number 1 of MAGA Trumpism, the first commandment of the MAGA cult is never acknowledge that your guy might have lost something sometime. These are not tough questions and these are not trick questions. We then get to yet another question. What about African studies, Middle Eastern studies, Chinese studies? What about that? And Linda McMahon says, we should be teaching both sides of that stuff. What are both sides of African American history? Slavery was good and slavery was bad, or I don't even know what that means. but this is where we are today.
Secretary McMahon, during your confirmation hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African-American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
Both sides.
I
don't know what both sides of African-American history would be.
Well, if African-American history is part of
certainly,
history,
but what we recognize throughout education is that a course is only 1 year or one semester. It would be impossible to teach African history and say European history at the same time. Do you not agree that it makes sense that there would be separate courses for these courses of study? It has happened throughout history. We're able to do it not just in history courses. We're able to do it with different types of literature courses or different types of music courses. One wouldn't learn about Baroque music and necessarily have to also learn about African drumming at the same time, right? We can separate those courses.
Yes, we can. And I think just as we teach U.S. history as a separate course.
Certainly. So you do not agree. So you do agree that African American cultures and African history should not be eliminated from courses, particularly AP African history.
Well, I think that African history can certainly be taught and not be considered a DEI.
There you go. So hard to find a less qualified person to be in this role. The topic of magnet schools came up. Magnet schools are free public elementary and secondary schools of choice with specialized curricula meant to attract students from various backgrounds. Linda McMahon says magnet schools are great. It is pointed out that the budget doesn't seem to coincide with that. And Linda McMahon goes, I guess you've looked at the wrong budget. And then it is pointed out, actually, the budget says nothing about that.
But what your budget does is it undercuts parental choice because magnet schools are choice-driven programs. I can say that personally because my daughter attended a magnet school and it was an excellent education experience. You zeroed out that account, which is completely undercuts and contradicts the hype in your opening statement about supporting parental choice. I mean, why wouldn't you support magnet schools?
I do support magnet schools, and as we both know, in Connecticut, I'll speak to magnet schools, but also in Connecticut, there has been the lowest growth in charter schools. I think we're like fifth from the bottom in the country for allowing more charter school growth.
So why zero out magnets?
Magnet schools are also, as are charter schools, they are public schools. So in the public schools funding, then I think that as the states have more control over their state budgets, they can allocate those dollars to magnet schools. I think magnet schools are great. And I know that a lot of them do focus on particular kinds of studies.
Thank you. Just reclaiming my talk is cheap. Budgets are what count. And this budget does not say that magnet schools are great. I have another question. I want to just move on.
You referenced the skinny budget, and that was an operating plan. We now have the full budget, so we might take another look at that.
Yeah, it says zero.
You may still...
Yeah, there's just nothing in there. Oh, we love magnet schools. No problem whatsoever. Well, why didn't you fund them? We did. Well, not in the skinny budget. No, it's in the full budget. No, it's not in the full budget either. Who the hell knows? And then finally, this both sides thing. Should Holocaust denial, for example, be taught if her claim is we need to be teaching both sides with history? It just gets wacky.
Reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time, Madam Secretary.
Okay,
Secretary. Would the Harvard Medical School, who is looking to hire an immunologist, would that person need to adhere to HHS Secretary Kennedy's view on the efficacy of vaccines?
Listen, we all know that we should have our universities look at what all the programs are.
I don't think you really thought through this viewpoint diversity issue
that you're trying to put forth is a false narrative.
Okay.
And the funding is a privilege.
Madam Secretary, reclaim my time. Does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department faculty count as an ideological litmus test?
I believe that there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses.
Well, what about this situation of Harvard's history department, and they're looking for another department member? Would being a Holocaust denier count?
Well, I do know that Harvard did replace its head of Middle Eastern studies even before we looked at it, because they believe.
Anyway, she just doesn't have she doesn't have the she doesn't have the cards, to quote Donald Trump. She just doesn't have what it takes to be in this role. And of course, we all know that when they talk about viewpoint diversity in general, they really only mean it in specific cases. They don't mean, oh no, you've got to have a Holocaust denier to balance out teaching the history of the Holocaust. It's in specific instances where it's convenient to them. And that's really what comes through here. Terrifying that this is who's in charge of the Department of Education, a department, by the way, that they want to shut down anyway. There is a coordinated campaign right now to force religious beliefs into law, and it's moving fast. In Texas, lawmakers are trying to mandate the 10 Commandments in every public school classroom. In our Republican Congress, religious conservatives passed a bill to strip Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming care using religion as the justification. And across the country right now, we see these Christian nationalists really emboldened by the MAGA movement, and they're reshaping America, and it's terrifying. This is why I support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They've been fighting back since 1978, defending the separation of church and state in courts, in schools, and wherever religion tries to take control. If you believe, as I do, that government should represent everyone, not just the religious right, take action now. Go to ffrf.us/freedom, or just text the word David to 511-511. The info is in the description. Text fees may apply.